Hi, I'm Steve from the Stone Crafting Workshop. Welcome. Today I'm going to start a tumble run that's actually going to take quite a long time. I've been collecting red stones. I wanted to do a tumble of all red stones, and I've selected a few. Some of them are from the beach and some of them are from paths and streams in the forest. And the other feature about these is that they are very rough stones, and I'll show you them in detail in a second. And I'm going to do the first stage of the tumble, the 80 grit stage. I suspect it's going to take 2 or 3 weeks before these are ready to go on to the next stage. And I thought I'd show you that just for your interest, to show you the difference between choosing really smooth stones and choosing stones that are really rough and rustic, but may have wonderful colours in them. So join me in the workshop and we'll start this tumble. So these are the stones I'm going to use. I've washed them off purely to look at the colour. At this stage, at the 80 grit stage, the very coarse grit, you don't have to worry too much about little bits of grit and what have you being on the stones. And you can see that some of them are, they're all pretty rough. Some of them are rougher than others. This one in particular, I'm not particularly confident about, but you know, ho-hum. And some are smoother than others, but they've all got problems. This one is probably the smoothest of the lot, but it's got a really nice purple kind of colour to it maybe. And I'm going to mix into the barrel, I'm going to mix in some small pebbles off of the beach, very small. I've used these before in tumbling. You can see some of them have got shapes where they've been shaped by the tumbling. I'm going to put a few of those in to make sure that the stones are moving well in the barrel. Partly because when you've got stones with flat sides like this one, what will happen is that'll start sliding round the inside of the barrel and you'll get this beautiful flat polished surface, and this side won't be hardly touched. So hopefully the pebbles will prevent that happening, but maybe not. So let's see how many of these we can get into our barrel. Let's put the pebbles in first. Quite a few different sizes here. It's generally accepted wisdom that you use stones of all similar sizes if you can. But I don't have a lot of personal wisdom, so I think that's probably a little bit too many. I've got one big one left over. I think that's a rock too far. So 3 teaspoons of 60 grit, and top it up with water. And we'll see how we go. So this has now been running for 3.5 weeks, if you remember. There was quite a lot of coarse red pebbles in here. Let's wash them off and have a look. That's the slurry. And bear in mind these won't be polished, and they won't even have finished tumbling at the 80 grit stage. But they're getting there. As I say, this is about 3.5 weeks. That's going to look really nice when it's done, but it still probably needs another, well, probably another 2 weeks, that one. That's very rough. That was pretty nice. That one's very nice. That's lovely. That's actually ready to go on and be polished. So I'll put that to one side. And this one needs more. Not going to get rid of that hole. I don't know if you can see that. No amount of tumbling will get rid of that. But these little white marks are still the remnants of the old skin around it. So that needs to go back in the barrel. And the same with this one. Unfortunately it's starting to get a bit rough around the back here, and that may not go. I'll worry about that at a later stage. I want to get rid of these white, this is again the outer skin, so that can go on. Same with that one. I think this one will be a non-starter really. It won't be any good. It's starting to develop these deep fissures, like cracks wearing out. In fact, I may not bother putting that back in. As I say, that one's definitely going to need another 2 or 3 weeks. Now what would normally happen is that I'd have 1 or 2 like this that I would simply put in on another batch. But we'll put that back in for now. Now that again, it's starting to produce big holes here, which is a shame because it's quite a pretty stone. I'll put that to one side. I think that's probably a not one to continue with. That one's similar, but not so bad. That might go on. And that one's coming on really nicely. Still needs more. You see the white marks here and here. That one's really nice. That's a lovely stone, the red and grey together. But it needs a lot more tumbling. Again, it might not be any good at all at the end of the day. That's a really pretty stone. Needs a bit more. And that one needs that needs a bit more here. Now this is a white quartz stone I put in at the last stage just to pack out the barrel, and it's looking a bit rough here. I'm going to put it in again, but what I may do is after the next week or 10 days or something, I might just grind that back off of that and put it in again. It's the thing you do when you take up tumbling. So I need to sort out some stones. So I'm going to find some more rocks. I'm going to put the little filler pieces in, and I might put a few more in. I'm going to put more 80 grit in here and set it off for another week, or maybe even 2 weeks or 3 weeks. It doesn't matter, whatever it takes. Right, so it's been now 4.5 weeks on our red tumble. Some of the stones I've taken out because I reckon they're ready to go on to the next stage, and I've included and added other stones, some red ones and stones of other colours, just to make up the bulk in the barrel, because as you're grinding away the stones are getting smaller and smaller, remember. So now I need to look at these one at a time. That's a lovely colour, deep red, but it's developed these holes in the bottom and the back, and here I don't really want to proceed with that one. I think no amount of tumbling will make that come good. And that was one I put in, I think, the last time I swapped over. Similar thing, it's developing holes and what have you. So I'm going to continue for that one's coming really good. That's a beautiful stone. Oh, that's a bit too big. So I'm going to continue with the 80 grit, I think, for another week. That one's pretty nice, but it is getting there. I think these are the worst ones, the most stubborn ones, and they may never come good. These are the ones that I've taken out along the way, and they're ready to go on to the next stage. And that one is as well. The small one here is very pretty. That one's got a deep chip occurred. And that one's got that mark in the back. I think I knew about that one. That one's coming good. I think another week or so. That's the one with the chip on it. I'm going to put them back on, the 80 grit, and see if we can finish some of these off. As I say, the stones are getting smaller and smaller. Well, I've got an 80 again box. These are stones that have already been run up to 80 and need a bit more. I'll check this in a day or so to make sure that it's running over. But all being well, we'll come back in 2 weeks and have a look at how far we're getting. But we're not doing badly. About half of those I started to tumble, forget the white one, have got to the stage where they're ready to go on, which is, you know, quite an achievement, I think, especially seeing how rough they were. So I'll see you in a week or two. It's been now 6 weeks of tumbling on stage 1, on grit stage 1, on 80 grit. The whole purpose of this, if you remember, was to see how long it would take to tumble really coarse stones that were quite rough to start with. We've got a few ready to go on to the next stage, and as the process was ongoing, I took those out and put other ones in, and the aim of this is to produce enough stones to fill this barrel and go on to the 220 stage, stage 2. So let's see how we're doing. So, oh, that's really, really pretty. So is that. That's ready to go on. That's ready to go on. That one's got a few marks on inside which probably won't come out. I'd need to tumble for another month or so to get those out. Look at that one, isn't that pretty? Off of a beach in Hampshire. So there's plenty in here that are good enough to go on to the next stage. But the whole point of this exercise was to show you how long it takes to prepare some stones to go on to polishing. And in this case, it's taken 6 weeks. And not all of these are perfect. There's a hole in the back of that one, although it's a beautiful stone. This really dark red on grey, I think, is just a lovely stone. And look at that. Isn't that nice? So now let's fill our barrel. First of all, I'm going to wash everything out thoroughly, clean all the stones, fill the barrel with 220 grit and go on to the next stage and polish them. So 3/4 full. Now the 220 grit, and we want a heaped tablespoonful in this amount of barrel. Then we top up with water to just the top of the level of the stones. I reckon that's about right. There we go. This should only take 5 or 6 days, and today is the 4th. So, I'll see you again in 5 or 6, 7 days. We've been on the 220 grit stage now for 7 days. Let's have a quick look. Just going to have a look at a couple of them and see what I think. If I'm not sure, we'll leave them in a few more days. Well, I think they're pretty smooth. I think we're ready to go on to the 400 grit stage. So go through the usual process of washing them out. So this is a 400 grit, and I've just got enough to do this. I need to order some more. And I'm going to put in some borax at this stage, just to provide some softening between the stones. If you're doing this, you might want to try a little bit of soap. Now this is the 400 stage. And the idea of this is that you run it for as long as it needs until it's polished the stones. It won't put the final burnish on them, but it will put a sheen on them. And the longer you run, the more, at this stage, probably the better the finish will be. Well, what I'll do, I'll run this up for a day and then I'll have a look probably this evening just to check how things are going, that it's not too thick or too thin. That's what I usually do. All being well, I'll see you in 7 to 14 days. I've been 12 days at the pre-polish 400 grit stage. Grave. Well, that's pretty foamy. Can't honestly remember what I did with this. It looks like I put borax with it. I'll check back on the previous video. Really pretty stones in there, aren't they? Now at this stage, at the end of the 400 grit stage, the stone should have a sheen, but not a polish. They won't have a polish. I've already washed these stones off very thoroughly. And this is the last check when I put them in one at a time. You don't want any stones carrying grit from the previous stage, and you don't want any stones in there that are going to break up. So there we are, ready for the polishing stage. And what we're going to do, I'm going to add some plastic beads just to soften the whole process so that the stones aren't crashing against one another. I think 2 spoonfuls will do, and then polishing powder. 2 spoonfuls of polishing powder. There we go. Top up with a little bit of water. Try not to overdo the water at this stage, I think. Third, polish. So, put this on the tumbler and leave it for 5 or 6 days, and then we'll have a look. So this is the final polishing stage. It's now been running for about 10 days, polishing these red stones. Let's take a couple out and see if I think they're finished. They should be. 10 days is a fair time for a polishing stage. But I was determined not to rush this particular batch. Plastic beads are still all in there. Try 1 or 2 of them off. Oh wow, that's beautiful. That is just lovely. Yeah. That's got a fantastic polish on it, just glorious. Okay, I'm going to wash these out now. I'm going to keep the plastic beads and I'll put those in a pot and mark them up as specifically for polishing using at the polishing stage. And then I'll dry off all the stones, and then we'll have a look at how we've done with our long red tumble. Here we are, and aren't they just lovely, just fantastic. I think I've got the best polish I've managed so far. Remember, I haven't burnished these. There's a thing where a lot of people put them in at the last stage just with soap or borax just to buff them up. I haven't done that. This is straight from the polishing stage. And look at the polish on that, and look what a beautiful stone that is. Just lovely. This one is really nice, and it really shows that you can get an interesting Baroque type of shape that's well polished by being a bit patient. And that's the advantage of starting out with really rough stones, is that if you manage it, you get to the end and you've got really interesting shapes. Look at the red on that, that's just glorious. This one's really interesting. It's lost quite a lot of its redness. It's still got some of its left, but you know, inside it's got this creamy colour inside. Just look at that, look at the colours in that. Is that beautiful? Well, I am absolutely over the moon with this. I think they're beautiful. They're fantastic polish, lovely colours, interesting shapes. And if you remember, the whole purpose of this was to show what you could do if you were willing to be patient at the first stage. The first stage took 6.5 weeks before we moved on to the 220 grit. And the other stages, you know, I forget what now, I took about a week. So the second stage took 6 days, and the third stage, the 400 grit, I left in for 12 days, and then the polish has been in for about 12 days as well. And you can see the results. I hope you think it was worth the wait. Just lovely. Well, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope it inspires you to try and do a tumble using really rough stones and putting the effort into getting them smoothed out. Some of these incidentally have lost their redness. This one has no red at all, and this one is the same, but it's still a lovely stone. Beautiful, almost toffee colour. Look at that. So thank you for watching. Hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, please give me a thumbs up, and if you want to see me do more tumbling and more stone crafting tips, tricks and exercises, please subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching.